it going, everyone? Jim back with another Cisco voice tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at globalization and localization. Some of you may have heard about this, some of you may not have. This is based on incoming and outgoing numbers with globalization and localization. What that means is we stretch out, in terms of, some of you might know, we do a fully qualified phone number, so we stretch that out to a fully qualified Cisco voice world. That's E.164. We stretch that out to the full E.164, or we condense it down to a local call manager, 4-digit, 5-digit, 7-digit, whatever your call flow is going to be. And how that works with the PSTN, call flow inbound, call flow outbound. So we're going to take a look at this, and I have a video already on call flow and a video already on the call manager configuration basics. This is kind of elaborating on all of that, okay, especially on the call flow part, because we're going to look at, in this video, the inbound call flow. And then shortly after, you can watch another video from me with the outbound call flow for all of this. And this is based on the new Cisco SR&D guides. I've been using this for a few years now, and I absolutely love the call flow. It's easy to troubleshoot, it's easy to find things, and it gets your number to one single format when it hits the call manager world, right? And then you change that according to what you want it to do for your phones, what you want it to do going towards your call manager, and all this good stuff. So we are going to take a look at how this all works. So let me get my face out of the way and let's dig in, alright? So I've pulled up my little PowerPoint here, and like I said, we're talking about the call flow inbound today, alright? And we're going to take a quick look at what's going on. So first of all, let's get to the next slide here. We're going to look at the gateway, how the calling search space on that gateway works for the incoming calling and called settings. Alright, and we're going to take a look at the inbound call flow within Call Manager, with how those calling search spaces and partitions work. And we're going to look at the device pool settings and why that matters. If you've seen my call flow, you already kind of know where this is going. And then the phone route patterns and DN settings, and how this all ties in for inbound call flow. Alright, so let's take a look at our topology. We have our internet coming in here. This is a SIP gateway. Alright, we have a SIP trunk from the internet world, or our PSTN world, hitting this cube. Then it goes to our call manager, which is in a ESXi environment. This is our core switch. So we have our call manager here. Whoops, I didn't mean to go to the next slide yet. So it's coming to our call manager. We also have a CUC for later videos, and then our phone. So what happens when an inbound call comes in? Well, let's just take a look at that. So, for example, we have a call coming from 304-555-5555. Alright, it's called into us 555-2000. So it comes in, it hits our gateway. Our gateway is going to apply some settings to this call. First of all, our incoming calling search space is set to this inbound calling search space. Alright, but just as important, this gateway prefixes a plus and a 1 to the calling and the called number. Alright, now we're dealing with 10 digits from our PSTN, and we are 4 digits in this lab in our internal call manager. Right, so we're receiving 10 digits from the call manager. This is going to be skewed if you're receiving 4 digits or whatever from your PRI, your SIP trunk, from the carrier. Nowadays it's mostly 10 digits, but it's not always. Some people still have 4 digits coming in from your PSTN medium. Alright, but in this case we're receiving 10 digits. Once it hits the SIP cube, this thing has some settings which we'll look at later, and it changes the calling. Now it prefixes this plus and 1 on it, and our called number comes in with the +1. Alright, so that's what we see now. So now let's go ahead and move forward here. And this inbound calling search space includes the inbound partition. That's all that's in this calling search space. Don't worry, we'll dig into the call manager and let you look at it. This is just I'm trying out some nice new pictures here, all right? So that's on the gateway setting. So it comes in with that. It prefixes the +1. Well, we have a translation pattern in our call manager that has this number, this called number, right? But we've done this funky pattern, and it's got it's got this +1 in the pattern, and its partition is in the inbound partition, so the gateway can hit that. Then the calling search space in the translation has internal, all right? And there's the call is going to flow on in, and now our number becomes +1 304 555 555. That's the called, but this translation translates this called party to 2000 because that's our internal. So now our called number becomes 2000, and that 2000 sits on a phone in the internal calling search space. All right. So the internal calling search space includes the DN partition, which is what's sitting on the actual line of the phone. So we have some transformations also on our device pool. And we'll dig into that. This is the actual pattern on there, and it discards the pre-dot. So it takes away that plus and 1 that we globalized with, and now the call becomes what's local to the phone, so that our eyes looking at an incoming phone, we don't have to see the +1, but the phone still knows about it. That's the important part. So we see on our phone displays newer models, 79, 40s, 45, 60s will not work this way, but for newer phones we will see the 304 555 555 pop up on our directory number 2000. So our caller ID shows this, but in our missed receives calls we see this +1. What does that do for us? Well, later in our outbound call flow we'll see all about that. We can just hit redial. No edit dialing. We don't have to go backspace, hit a 9. None of that. We hit redial in our missed receives calls and it will just go. So great. So this is just a high overview, all right? And what happens in our gateway settings is the gateway is where our globalization process starts. As soon as those calls come into the gateway, it globalizes by prefixing that +1, and as I alluded to a minute ago, or the needed prefix to get to a full E.164 number, right? So if you're 4 digits from the carrier, you're going to have +1 555 5555, and then whatever your 4 digit is from the carrier will already be there, okay? And we also prefix the calling number, so we get that in our phone missed received call section, all right? So we prefix the incoming calling number as well. And then we route to our call flow, and phone localizes at the device pool level with the transform. So we go through that translation profile to switch from our fully globalized number to our internal. Or, as we'll see in an example, on your DNs you could have a fully globalized number. Or you could have both. There's a lot of ways to do this, all right? And we'll get to all of that. And our gateway calling search space, it has the inbound partition in the inbound calling search space. This is the actual calling search space that's applied to the gateway, and it determines our inbound call flow. Okay, and we keep that flow restricted to just the inbound stuff. So the inbound partition will belong to things like our translation patterns. That's where that's actually assigned. Okay, and this allows for easy troubleshooting in that call flow, because there's only one place where the inbound partition is going to be, and we can easily search for that in translation patterns or directory numbers. So our gateway is actually assigned the inbound calling search space, and that's the inbound partition. That inbound partition is applied to translation patterns or directory numbers, and in a translation pattern specifically, it has a calling search space assigned to it because it comes into the translation pattern via this inbound partition, but then it goes out of that translation pattern with the internal calling search space, and within that is where our directory numbers sit. So that's how we get from a fully globalized E.164 number to our itsy bitsy little 4-digit dial plan. All right. So that's where we're looking at. I hope you're liking the visuals. Now we're going to dig into Call Manager, and we get to see how all the nuts and bolts really work. All right. So now that we're in the Call Manager, and this is just the lab. This is in a production environment. So with globalization, we start at the gateway. So it's a great thing for us to start by looking at the gateway. In this lab, we don't have an actual gateway. We have a trunk, a SIP trunk going to our cube router. And so we're going to take a look at this, and we're going to show exactly the settings in here that make this globalization work. First of all, we have our calling search space for inbound calls. And this is going in our inbound calling search space. The only thing in here is an inbound partition, and we assign that to translation profiles or specific extensions, DNs that we want for inbound ringing. All right, but then down here we have for the incoming calling and incoming called settings. We're going to prefix this +1 to get us fully globalized. Okay, that's going to prefix because we have 10 digits once again coming in. So we're just prefixing this +1 to get every call on the same fully globalized framework. Okay. Now, for outbound calls, we have these transforms, which we will get into when we get into the outbound calling video. So we're not going to take a look at that now, but just be aware that these transforms are here, and it deals with localization back out to the PSTN or to the queue. All right. So we have our prefix numbers. We're pointing to our inbound calling search space. So let's take a look at that. Under our calling search spaces, we have our inbound, and it just has the inbound partition. So with our gateway, once we prefix this +1, we need to be able to route that to our dial plan. So let's take a look at a translation pattern. So we have some others for outbound. This is the one we're looking at right now, and this is our one and only DID for this lab at this point in time. And you can see that we have added a plus and a 1. Now we need this character. It's an escape character because this is the plus is special. So we have to use this backslash in here. Okay, the backslash allows that plus to be in our pattern. And then we have our +1 and our 10-digit number that we are wanting to match. And of course this can be a mask, right? If we had a bunch of DIDs, whatever the case, we would mask it, right? But in our case, we only have the one DID, so I had it laid out specifically. And it's in the inbound partition. So we know our gateway can hit this partition. Calling search space, what's in it allows the call flow to work. And our calling search space of this pattern goes to internal calling search space. That becomes important for our next hop. Now we do need urgent priority set on this, so it matches immediately. And we're going to send the call to 3000 internally in our system. Alright? So let's look at this internal calling search space. The internal calling search space has a bunch of stuff in it, but excuse me, alarm's going off. The important one is the DN partition. Okay, now we have some other internal stuff. We have things for Informacast, CCX Unity, whatever. I have things in here for future growth of the lab. But this is the important one. That is what we actually set on our extensions. So if we go and look at a device which only have one registered soft phone for the lab, and we can see that the line level, it's in that DN partition. So we now know that that translation profile can flow from the gateway to that inbound calling search space, and then calls can flow out of that translation pattern towards our internal calling space. Okay? So what does this do? What does globalization do? It gets all of our numbers to one place, and then we can route it within the system easily from that point. Okay? So this whole number, including the plus and the 1, can be on our DNs. It doesn't have to be in a translation pattern like this. It can be directly on the DNs. Or we can have a mixture of both a 4-digit, 5-digit extension and a fully globalized. And so we'll take a peek at that as well. First, I want to show you the transforms to where we go from the fully globalized to localized for our calls inbound. So let's take a peek at our transform patterns, and we're going to look at the calling, because we are going to localize for what our phone displays see. Now we have stuff in here for outbound as well, but we want to look at these phone localizations. We have this plus dot bang and a plus 1.304 bang. Now what this does, this is for, in my local area, we have a 304 area code. So I put in my local ones here, and we can transform this to what we see on our phone display or our caller ID when we receive a call. So what this transform does is it gets rid of the pre-dot. So we strip out all this plus 1 stuff in front of the dot. Gets rid of all that, so all we see is 304 and the number. Now, if your local area is used to seeing 7 digits, you could put the dot over here. Get rid of the area code. Alright, that's what this is for. It's stripping off for localization to what we want our phones to see. So when a call comes in, we're not going to see the plus 1. We're going to see just the 304. And how is this applied? It's on the device pool. So on our main HQ device pool is where our transforms are set. And they are right here on the calling party transformations. Alright, so let's go ahead and set the calling search space for that, which is the phone calling search space. Alright, and then we'll save and reset this device pool. And that popped up on my other screen. There we go. We're going to just reset this device pool. Now that setting will be in place when we start our test calls. I also wanted to show you what it's like to have fully globalized within our devices itself. Okay? So within our directory number, we could have set here this full plus 1 globalization here. And I'll just say 304.555. So that can be right there on our directory number, and it will match coming in. Okay? So that's one way to do it. You would just have to have this partition in something. I would name it differently. I wouldn't call it my DN. Alright? I would name it differently and have it to where the gateway calling search space can reach this partition. Okay? That's one way to do it. The translation patterns to translate it into your internal call plan is another way. Or if you're transitioning or don't want to bother with the fully qualified right in the directory number, that's fine. And you really don't want to do a whole bunch of translation patterns. Well, when you set up and do bulk administration in the phones or whatever the case is, you can also have your internal calling plan, 4 digits, 5 digits, whatever it is, and then down here with your E.164 alternate number, hey, guess what that's for? You could go ahead and put a mask in here. Let's say you have a range of DIDs, right? So you could just do +1 304 555 and then have a mask. And you can see that this one already knows about this 3000 that's on our directory number. Then you'd add it to the local route partition by giving it a partition. And I have this E.164DN partition already in here, and it's for things just for this. I have this DN partition that's different from our line DN. So we could just add this E.164DN partition to our inbound calling search space, and calls can come directly to a number that matches right here. So we can mix and match all of these different ways to get inbound calling to work. It's just about matching the fully globalized to your internal call dial plan. Okay? I have used this method a lot, especially when migrating systems that are already in 4 digits or 5 digits or whatever the case is, but we want to leverage this fully qualified E.164 number. So I will use this field and put a DID in here with the +1. And this works great as long as the calling search spaces also has this in it. So in this case, we would go to our inbound calling search space, and we would add this E.164DN right down here like this. And that's how that would work. Now in my lab, I'm going to stick with just doing translation patterns. Okay? So that is basically inbound calling. We have looked at how our gateway settings first deal with the globalization by prefixing this +1, or if you had fewer digits coming in by your carrier, you would stretch that out to make it fully globalized however you needed. Like my case, my area code 304, if I had 4 digits coming from the carrier, it would look like that. That just stretches it out to its normal, fully qualified, I should say, E.164 format. Okay. We also want to make sure that our routing's good, so our calling search space is there to direct calls specifically where we want it by what is in this calling search space. Then we route it with the translation patterns by matching that +1. This could be a mask or a specific DID, as long as this partition matches what's in that gateway calling search space. Then we translate it to a calling search space that this can get to reach our internal call plan. And in this case, we're just going to 3000. So with all that said, let's place a test call so you can see exactly what it does on the caller ID of a phone. So let me pull up, here we go, my soft phone. It has 3000 on it. And I'm going to call from another lab number. And we should see that coming in now. And there we go. So we can see the calling number, and notice, there we go, notice that there is no +1 on the from number. And we'll go ahead and hang up that call. So our transform work that we applied to our device pool, it's not showing the +1 in front of that number, even though it's prefixed in the gateway with a +1. That is the localization part. And the globalization is getting everything that comes through that system in that fully qualified E.164 format. So that way we know that it's always in that format when we're doing routing, when we're doing like AAR, when we're doing calls to anywhere within the system, or tell and hop off, or anything like this. It makes everything easier with the routing and the call flow. Right? So now, even though this is kind of a outbound call conversation, you just saw that that inbound call worked, comes in the gateway with the +1, goes through our system, and then is localized with the transform, so that our display just shows the 304. However, if we go to our received calls and look at that, it has the +1. So I can just hit redial on this, and we'll talk about this in more detail in our outbound call flow. But all I have to do is hit dial, and that will call back out. Alright? Because of the fully qualified format, the newer phones, they pull from Call Manager to get the call history. And so because that +1 was actually on there, it was just transformed away. Remember, by our device pool setting in the calling party, right here, we have this transform, calling party transform. This phone calling partition is in that calling search space that we just applied on the device pool. So this matches anything. This matches 1304, and it takes off that +1. Well, this will do the same thing. If I didn't have this, we'd still see the same display. This is just for local 304s and what I want to do with that. I'm showing this here because we could put the dot over here and only see 7 digits for local calls. Okay? And all we're doing in here is discarding the pre-dot. That's it. So that is our discussion on inbound call flow. We've seen the inbound call test. We've seen how this transform and why this matters right on the device pool on getting our calling party localized to what we want our users to see and what they're used to seeing. But then it gets within our system, it gets that call to where we want it. We can do it via a translation pattern, or we can do it on the device level by adding that E.164 section right here, or putting it on the line itself. So we have quite a few options for inbound call flow. Now we're going to get to our next topic in the next video, and outbound call flow and how all that routing works. And I hope that this has been very informative for everyone. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got something out of it. Please like and subscribe my videos so I can get more and more out for you. After this series, we're going to look at Unity integration and gateway integration. So that's what's up and coming. And until then, thanks for watching.